Bliss.io.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to another installment of Barkwire with Mike and Phil. And tonight we're talking about movies that appear to be live-action Roadrunner cartoons. And you've all seen Roadrunner cartoons where the Roadrunner runs off the edge of the cliff, he falls 1,000 feet, and then a little atomic bomb cloud rises. Or the Roadrunner races toward a tunnel, only to find that it's painted on the side of a cliff and he goes splat and turns to jelly. Or the Roadrunner dives into a wood chipper and gets spewed out the other end. Well, there are a number of movies that take that literally, and tonight we're going to discuss several of them. And let's start with the John Wick movies, Phil, because everybody's seen the John Wick movies. And we know what to expect. The first one had a plot. We cared about the dog. And John Wick had to fight his way through an army of assassins, but it made sense. He was avenging his dog and trying to stop the takeover of New York. But by the second one, we'd slipped into crowd crazy land, and there was no real reason for the violence, except that everybody wanted to be a member of the high table, whatever that is.
Right.
And because of that, a lot of tension ensued, and there were fights. And then by the third one, it was just a non-stop brawl. And by the fourth one, they didn't even have any plot whatsoever. They just zoomed in on people fighting, and it was fighting for 2 hours.
You know, it was funny. I actually, and I didn't do this prepping for this week because I didn't know what our topic would be. But out of morbid curiosity in the last week, I've watched all 4 John Wick movies and started The Ballerina as well, which is a spinoff of John Wick. And I actually thought the first one was a fun movie because they stole his car and killed his dog, and he's now on a vengeance quest to basically take out the people who did that. But what's funny is in the rest of the series, I was blown away by how many panes of glass John Wick was thrown through.
Did you count?
No, I did. I got bored of counting. I lost at 20, and it's just like throw him through glass. He picks up a gun, shoots somebody, throw him through glass, picks up a gun, shoots somebody, and then by the time you hit the fourth one, they've pretty much gone off the deep end of not that it was realistic to begin with, but when his arch nemesis is blind, and he's sword fighting with John Wick and tapping his cane to be Daredevil, I was just like, okay, they really kind of just were like, you know what? There's zero reality required for this series because the blind guy was a great fighter. And he wore sunglasses, but then you realized his eyes were white, which was a mysterious reveal in the movie, that it wasn't just a dude who wanted to wear sunglasses in the building, but he was actually blind.
Who played that fighter? Do you recall?
Do what? I don't remember. No, I don't. But it was, if you just want a mindless show with lots of guns and punching and people taking turns fighting John Wick, that's the other thing about we never expected Roadrunner to be realistic. So, it's a mindless escape with over the top, but like you've got 30 people attacking and they're coming at him with swords, okay? In 2026, the fight could be over in 6 seconds if everybody had guns, Instead, it's like 2 gun guys, John takes him out, and then he fights 4 sword guys, takes those guys out, but they all take turns like the old martial arts movies of the 70s and 80s, where you have a circle of people and one runs in, he fights them, one runs in, instead of just swarming him and ending the movie, The
blind swordsman was played by Donnie Yen, whom I thought it was The Blind Swordsman, because he was in the fourth John Wick movie, and I remember it was a big deal because Donnie Yen is a masterful martial artist and actor in his own right. And if you have not seen his Ip Man movies, they're fantastic, especially the first and the last one. And in the last one, Ip Man was Bruce Lee's teacher. In the last one, Ip Man travels to Seattle to help his disciple establish his practice. And I remember seeing Ip Man #4 years ago, and I thought, man, they get the ugliest, most hateful white actors to play the bad guy. And since then, I became a huge Scott Adkins fan. And then I watched Ip Man 4 again, and I realized it was Scott Adkins.
Wow. Yeah, he was great as the blind swordsman, but I blame the writers because,
yes, of course,
it's like, and we've discussed how important writing is on your show previously. It's just like it's like they take some ideas, shake them up in a basket, and start pulling them out, and that is their script. Like you said at the very beginning, John Wick 1 actually had a premise and a plot, but I think once you pass number 2, or once you pass number 1, it was like 15 minutes of plot and an hour and a half of just John Wick being thrown through glass or being thrown off a building and hitting 6 things on the way down and then getting up and fighting again.
That type of action has infected so many modern action films. I have to add that Scott Adkins played one of his adversaries in John Wick 4. He was the big fat guy in the suit. Of course, he wore a fat suit. But Scott Adkins, again, is another remarkable martial artist and a fair to middling actor. His best movie is Undisputed #4, Boyka, which has a lot of heart and superb action films. But Scott Adkins makes a movie a week, and most of them are pretty bad.
Well, anytime something makes it to #4, you can't expect it to be that great. So it's interesting that you said #4 is the good one.
Well, that's because they were forced, #1, I forget, but Michael J. White starred in #2, and they kept going through Undisputed. Oh, the first Undisputed took place in an American prison, and it involved, I believe, Sylvester Stallone against an actor whose name I can't recall. And it was brokered by a con played by the guy that played Peter Falk. Peter Falk played the con that put this fight together, and it was a big hit. And then so they said, well, let's do Undisputed 2. But then they couldn't get Sylvester Stallone back. So they said, well, we can film it in Eastern Europe really cheap and set it in a Russian prison. And so they got Michael J. White. That's a pretty good movie, too. But #4 is the best of the lot because they said, well, we don't have him. We might as well start over. And the only premise is guys that are trapped in the Russian jail system forced to fight for their lives. But in #3, Boyka is so successful he wins his freedom. So in #4, he's free and he has to be suckered back into the prison system in order to fight. But there's a lot more to it than that. So just a word for a movie that makes sense before we turn to these Roadrunner cartoons.
Well, one character I would like to discuss that I actually really liked in all the John Wick films was Ian McShane. Do you know who that is?
Yes, everybody loves Ian McShane no matter what he makes.
Well, the only way I knew him was as the stepdad in Hot Rod, and he was hilarious in that. And so when I first start watching the John Wick films, like, oh my gosh, it's the stepdad from Hot Rod. So, but yeah, and also the other character that I actually enjoyed was Lance Riddick. Do you know who that is?
Oh, he's one of my favorite actors. He will be missed. He is missed.
He was really great as the concierge guy and, took in John Wick's dog and his new dog. Now, before we move on from John Wick, I will tell you they came out with a new film called The Ballerina.
I saw it. I saw about as much of it as I could stand, which was maybe an hour, in which you have this 85-pound girl tossing 200-pound men around like bean bags. They bring Angelica Houston in for a little class, and the whole premise is ridiculous, as is it is with most of these new movies that star boss girls as master martial artists who throw around 250-pound men like beanbags.
Yeah. Well, I will say that, it's context it determines whether you like something or not, right? If you've watched a bunch of just totally bad movies and then you watch an okay movie, you're like, wow, that's really a good movie. And then later you watch it, it's like, maybe it wasn't that good. It was just what I was comparing it to. So because I've been on a John Wick binge and really got bored in 2, 3, and 4, I watched Ballerina. I'm like, wow, this one actually has a story.
It did.
It actually had a story. And so it was kind of refreshing for the John Wick line. And, I haven't finished it yet because I was like, okay, I need to go to bed. But the whole idea of her going to that village looking for the clan, not the clan that the Southerners know,
not that clan,
a clan of warrior kind of people. I thought that was a trippy thing with the families and stuff. So, I feel like they made a little bit of an effort on Ballerina, even though it's hard. The suspension of disbelief does go out the window when the 90-pound girl is taking on, 4 200-pound dudes with guns and survives. But, John Wick is not based in realism. So, it is what it is.
The one reason we watch these movies is because of the martial arts choreography, which is uniformly excellent, even though it's absurd.
Oh, yeah.
But it's staged beautifully in real time. And you see these actors who are mostly trained martial artists going through their moves, and it looks very credible. And there's a huge difference between these action scenes and the action scenes in traditional Chinese kung fu movies. I was just watching Mad Monkey Kung Fu the other night, which is considered a classic. And indeed, the participants were all master martial artists, but the choreography was so staged and ballet-like and done in kind of slow-mo for the rubes, with a lot of posing, a lot of elegant posing before the next move. Whereas in a modern American action film, the action explodes realistically in very fast, so fast sometimes that you can't see exactly what they're doing. But believe me, those moves are orchestrated. They're real moves, even though the opportunity to use them in real life rarely arises, and the people know what they're doing. I'm talking about things, not just things about blows, kicks, and hits, but hip throws, head throws, choke outs, joint locks, things like that. And I applaud them for the versatility and the way they keep adding new techniques.
That's cool. Yeah, so it's ironic that I decided to do a John Wick marathon this week, and then you call me and you're like, hey, let's talk about ROADRUNNER compared to action films. I'm like, okay, I'm ready for this discussion.
Which brings us to our next ROADRUNNER cartoon, which I just watched last night, which is SISU, Road to Revenge. And I have to say that this is the most absurd cartoon-like action movie I've ever seen in my life, and I loved it.
I agree.
There's virtually no hand-to-hand combat. It's mostly a long chase scene with SISU, who is a Finnish man who fought the Nazis in the first movie. In the second movie, the Soviet Union has grabbed a huge chunk of Finnish land for themselves, including SISU's homeland, his home cabin. And it's about him going into the Soviet Union to dismantle his cabin log by log, loaded up on this massive 6-wheel truck with his dog, and to try and get back to Finland to rebuild. And they pull this guy out of a Siberian prison, this well-known hitman and soldier, played by Stephen Lang. And I didn't know it was Stephen Lang for about a half hour. And then finally I said, that's Stephen Lang, and who's perfect for this role. I mean, he looks absolutely Russian. He acts absolutely Russian. And so Stephen Lang sets off with his Soviet hitmen to stop SISU at all costs. And this involves tanks, airplanes, bazookas, rockets, whatever you name it. And the action is so outrageous. Like when they're pursuing SISU and in this armored car, and SISU's driving this huge truck with all these logs packed on back, and it suddenly hits the brakes, and 4 logs fall off the rear end perfectly to form a ramp. And he stops, bam, stops, the logs fall off, and the armored car that's chasing him goes up the ramp, soars through the air, goes head over head, lands, and explodes. And there was a lot of that in the movie.
You know, the whole scene of the river and the logs was kind of bizarre. I mean, none of it is written to be believable. None of it. They make zero effort to say, man, this could really happen. But it is a fun roller coaster ride, you know?
And I thought
that movie, I saw it in the theater because I thought the trailer was really good. And I was like, you know what? I don't think this is a hit, but it'll be a fun popcorn movie. And you don't need to have an Oscar winner every time you go to the movie theater. You don't need to have an Oscar winner every time you watch a movie at home, but you do want to enjoy it and have fun. And I would say that was a fun one.
Oh, it was. And some of the stunts were off the wall, like when the fighter planes are chasing him and he's going down this narrow road in the forest, and the fighter plane turns itself vertical, one wing up, one wing down to chase him. Because there's no room on either side of the forest for the plane to go horizontal. So he just hits the brake again, and the plane runs into him. It rips off its left wing, and the guy ejects from the plane, and he's sitting on the ground strapped into his seat when SISU emerges from the forest. And then they have this little exchange, and SISU is just about to kill him when the gang catches up from behind him. And then, of course, more mayhem ensues with SISU. Yeah, that's the movie, and it's a lot of fun. You won't be bored, and you never think it's stupid because it takes itself seriously. And that's the key to any one of these action films, is a story has to take itself seriously before we can take it seriously. And there are a lot of action films that fail on that front. There are a lot that succeed, like Hobbs and Shaw, with The Rock and Jason Statham, which is kind of a spin-off from the Furious movies. But the thing that elevates all these buddy guys who hate each other and are terrific fighters is the banter. They're constantly insulting each other, and often it's very funny.
What did you think of The Beekeeper?
You know, I love The Beekeeper up until the last quarter, and then we run into the same problem that we do with every Roadrunner movie, and that's that Jason Statham finds himself shooting hundreds of thousands of nameless, faceless enemies who are dive bombing out of the sky, crawling up out of the sewers, riding up on motorcycles. God knows where they're coming from. God forbid that we have a movie that ends with a simple showdown between a handful of protagonists.
It you know, once again, they're over the top. It's the John Wick. You know, it seems like the John Wick success pretty much created the format that everybody else is going to use. That John Wick was wildly successful and zero basis in reality, and one guy can take on 100 guys that are all armed to the teeth. You know,
same formula with Nobody and Nobody 2. Same formula, and you know, you like Nobody until the end, when Nobody and his father, played by Christopher Lloyd, are machine gunning to death hundreds of thousands of nameless, faceless antagonists who are, again, burbling up out of the sewer, racing down the road, parachuting out of the sky. God knows where they're coming from. God knows they can't have an ending where they kill a handful of protagonists. They have to go up against uncountable thousands. Same thing with The Wrecking Crew, which just came out and stars Jason Momoa and David Bautista. And that's another buddy action movie where they spend the first half of the movie insulting each other. And a lot of it is very funny. But that movie goes off the rails during a car chase scene where they're trying to escape the bad guys, and they're running down this highway in Hawaii. And the bad guys are causing cars to flip, fly through the air, crash, and burn. And I'm not just saying one or two cars, but a half dozen cars filled with innocent bystanders whose lives are just sacrificed for the sake of spectacle. And the movie never addresses this. And when that happens, it jerks you out of the suspension of disbelief, saying heroes wouldn't allow this. They would not permit this race to go on because it's costing the life of dozens of innocent bystanders. Never addressed. And at the end, these two guys take on hundreds of thousands of assassins. These guys are mostly from the Japanese criminal gangs, the Yakuza, who are parachuting out of the sky, riding up on motorcycles, and crawling up out of the sewers because, again, the big showdown, they have to face an army. It's always an army.
Yeah. Well, it's a formula that Hollywood loves now. And I think if they ever made an attempt, people would love it even more.
An attempt to do what?
Attempt at actually having a good ending.
Well, there are a few movies that do, and at the top of the heap is The Equalizer, starring Denzel Washington, which is the best Punisher movie ever made, probably the best vigilante movie ever made, because it's believable. Every frame of it is believable. Even when he goes to Russia to kill the big boss, he never goes up against hundreds of thousands of hordes. And when you see the action, it's all very limited. It's beautifully done. That's an Antoine Fuqua film, and he's one of my favorite directors now. He also did Training Day, for which Denzel got an Oscar, another great movie. And he also did Southpaw, a boxing movie starring Jake Gyllenhaal, which I wholeheartedly recommend. Fuqua's movies, especially the Equalizer movies, especially number 1 and number 3, which is as good as the first. And the reason is it's a completely different setting and premise. Once again, it's Robert McCall up against a criminal gang, only in this case it's the mafia in their home state of Italy. And the whole thing takes place in Italy. It's visually stunning. And the beginning is intriguing, where you see Robert McCall sitting in the estate of this millionaire drug smuggler who's coming home and finds all his men dead. So he goes into his main office, and there's Robert McCall just sitting quietly in a chair while his 2 surviving hitmen train their guns on him. And I don't want to give away too much there, but right from the go, McCall demonstrates his hand-to-hand expertise. And then he travels, this is on Sicily, then he travels to the mainland on Italy, and I think it's the Amalfi Coast. It's so beautiful and picturesque. And he tries to hide himself in this small town and befriend the locals. And that's when he learns that they're all being extorted by the mafia.
Okay, my ADD is strong, but we always circle back. One of my favorite Denzel Washington action films, which has a premise that is so unrealistic, but Denzel made it believable, is Book of Eli.
I knew it.
I loved Book of Eli, and he does fight a lot of people, but they made it believable. You know, the way they did it, it was very believable. And, you know, I think that Book of Eli has been out long enough. If somebody's going to see it, they're going to see it. They've already seen it. But the concept of the twist with Denzel was amazing.
Yeah, and I have to salute the premise behind the movie, because you very rarely get a faith-based action movie.
Yeah, he's protecting the Bible, and he's blind, but he's protected by God to protect this book kind of concept. And I just thought it was a great movie. I really had, there were things that surprised me. I'm usually good at, you know, putting things together and calling it before it happens. There were a few twists in that film that I did not get in advance, and I was like, dang, I didn't see that coming. But yeah, Book of Eli is the opposite of kind of the ones we've been discussing.
I have to give that another watch. Denzel wasn't so successful in a remake of The Magnificent Seven, mainly because you cannot improve on a movie like The Magnificent Seven. Antoine Fuqua wrote a modern script, and it's kind of interesting as a Western, but it's a B-movie Western, and compared to an A-movie Western like The Seven Samurai.
Yeah. They, a little side note, one of my longtime friends was in The Magnificent Seven with Denzel Washington. Jonathan Joss. Do you know that actor?
JAA?
Jonathan Joss. He is a Native American actor. He played Denali in The Magnificent Seven.
I have the movie, Phil, so I'll watch it again.
Yeah, he was actually murdered about 2 years ago here in San Antonio in a fight with his neighbor. But he was John Redcorn in King of the Hill. He was also Ken Hatote, chief of the Yawamapoke people in Parks and Rec with the comedy on NBC.
Very funny show.
Yeah. And he also played I'm trying to remember this character name in Tulsa King. He was in the first couple of episodes of Tulsa King as Crazy Face or something like that. Anyway, Jonathan, but he was telling me that, they had this scene in The Magnificent Seven where he was riding a horse and they were doing a fight scene and he was riding the horse and he was, I don't remember if he was thrown from the horse. Something happened. And he said, as a Native American, I can't act like any of this is hard for me, And he had this crazy runaway horse and it got spooked or something like that. And he's like, dude, I just had to go back to my trailer and pretend like it didn't hurt and then come back the next day and keep shooting. But yeah, he had some great stories to tell about working on Magnificent Seven as Denali, which was an interesting character, I thought.
Which reminds me, I watched Lonesome Dove recently again, and what a wonderful show it is. It's just superb, except for one little problem. They have a bad guy who's played by who's an Indian. I think he's called Blue Dove or Blue Pigeon or something, and is played by Frederick Forrest, who's a decent actor. But the moment he appears as this Indian, it jolts you out of your suspension of disbelief because no one could possibly believe that he's an Indian. And that's a problem. I mean, there's a reason they're called actors, and some actors can pull it off, but he was not one of them.
Okay, we have totally moved around this concept, but before we circle back to Roadrunner and the Coyote and Wile E. Coyote, I just have to shout out my all-time favorite modern Western, Tombstone.
That's sitting on my table in there right now. I'm thinking, geez, I like that movie. Should I watch it again? Should I not watch it again?
You totally should. Val Kilmer was unbelievable. Everybody was great in that movie. It was just a fun movie. In fact, when I was doing a cross-country family road trip, I said, let's go to Tombstone, Arizona. I want to go see where the Battle of the OK Corral was and check out the silver mines. And if I wasn't such a fan of the movie Tombstone, I may not have made the excursion to Tombstone, Arizona.
Did you go?
Oh, of course. My kids were ready to go after about an hour, but I had the keys, so they had to go wherever I wanted.
Did they preserve the corral?
No, it's all a tourist thing, but they reenact it. A little piece of trivia that I did not know. Do you know why Tombstone, Arizona is called Tombstone?
No.
Would you guess that it's because of all the people that were killed there or something?
I would guess it has something to do with that.
So here's the story that I learned in the silver mine tour. The guy got a silver claim in that area, and his friends and family thought he was an idiot for moving down there to mine for silver. And they said, the only thing you're going to find there is your tombstone. And he found silver, and it became a silver rush town, and he named it Tombstone, Arizona.
Oh, that is interesting.
He found his tombstone, but it was the name of the city, not getting killed down there searching for silver. I thought that was a nice little twist that I had never heard.
Wyatt Earp was an interesting guy. He had no children, but he lived a long life. He died in Hollywood. in 1923 because he had gone there to help advise them on the making of Westerns.
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Now
I'll stop derailing us.
Oh, yeah. I'm digging for a shoe here because it's cold where I am.
While you dig for your shoe, I'm going to do I discovered a trade paperback this week that I did not know existed because we do talk about comic books a lot. I've always loved The Peacemaker. So this is the Peacemaker trade paperback. It's called Kill for Peace. And what's cool about it is it's not just DC. It starts off with the Fighting Five number 40, and it does a lot of the old 1960s Fighting Five comics.
Wow.
And then it goes into the Peacemakers from DC, and then it even goes into Vigilante comics, and then it has Checkmate, but it's like an omnibus to me for.
Is that Ditko?
I did not know this existed. Do what?
That 2 pages you just showed me, was that Ditko?
No, Ditko wasn't Ditko. But you know what's interesting? The artist and letterer of the original Peacemaker was from San Antonio. His name was Pat Boyette, and he was a news guy on the air in San Antonio, and he also was co-creator of Peacemaker.
That's a very familiar name. I've heard it many times in association with comics.
And to me, as a little kid, when you're reading a comic, anytime you get a diagram, I was always excited.
Yeah, me too.
It's like, oh, look, it's the under ice atomic installation, and we have a map. For some reason as a kid, and they don't do enough of that in modern comics, where you get a map, or a, like in G.I. Joe, when they did an issue with Larry Hama, did an issue where they do a blueprint of the pit, which is the G.I. Joe HQ. And I was just like, okay, as a little kid, my imagination's running wild. I think we need to bring more maps and diagrams back, Mike. So we have to work one into AxiCab.
We did it in Nexus early on. We showed diagrams of the planet Ilum, and we showed a diagram of a black hole to illustrate how it's possible to travel between stars. And this is based on real physical theory, which is a black hole was originally a star, and like all stars, it spins, but then it collapses in upon itself due to the weight. And the weight is so great, the weight is so intense that not even light can escape. And that's why it's called a black hole. But it's spinning. And when it collapses, it's like an ice skater who's doing spins out on the ice, and then she pulls her arms in. And when that happens, she spins so much faster.
Yeah.
And the theory says that if you insert a ship at exactly the equator, at exactly 90 degrees from the poles, it will be sucked instantly into the black hole, spat out of a white hole some light years distance, and thus you could travel between stars.
Based in physics and science.
Science, baby.
Science.
Yeah. All right. What we could talk about Roadrunner cartoon movies all day because there's so many, and we have barely scratched the surface.
Yeah.
But before we go, I want to make a public service announcement. You see this?
Yeah.
This is nacho cheese sauce. Do you understand me? This is nacho cheese sauce. So keep your hands off. Thank you.
It's funny. I like it when you buy a product that doesn't really have the ingredients in it that you think. They call it sauce. They don't. If it was really nacho cheese, it would just be nacho cheese, but they call it nacho cheese sauce. So look at your ingredients. I always find that interesting.
Oh my God. Whey, vegetable oil, soybean oil, canola oil, sunflower oil, modified food starch, cheddar cheese, some cheese, salt, extract, distilled vinegar, sodium phosphate, salt, jalapeno peppers, sodium caffeinate, natural flavor, monosodium glutamate, lactic acid, cellulose gum, colon added, collar added, excuse me. They had me worried.
I'm glad they didn't add colon to your nacho cheese sauce. Colon added would not be an appetizing dish, but you notice cheese was like the 6th ingredient. So they call it nacho cheese sauce. So any add on to your public service announcement, if you buy something that you think it is and they add sauce at the end, take a look at the ingredients. That's my public service announcement.
Excellent.
But you know what? I love nacho cheese sauce, and I'm fine with it being a petroleum product because it's so delicious.
Got to keep that petrodollar rolling. It doesn't matter what industry, right? Right? You guys, since this is a movie
go ahead.
theme show, I wanted to show you guys something that just hit. Okay, a friend of ours did the movie Missouri Breaks, which is on our Roku channel. And go watch it. Right, really good movie done on a $25,000 budget.
I need to. Is it the same one starring Jack Nicholson and Marlon?
No. This is Jared Christman. He directed it, did the score, acted in it, just everything, and it's a really, really good movie. Okay, right. They actually somebody gave them period equipment and shit to wear. It's a post Civil War era movie, and it's great. It's really great for what they had to work with. It's amazing, and they're coming out with another one. They're kickstarting this right now, where even shadows fear to tread. There is a 7-minute trailer that I'm not gonna play, but he's making me a shorter one to play in our rotation. It'll be on the Roku channel, yo. It's good stuff, man. Yeah, I'll get you the link, no doubt. It's kickstarting right now for phase 1 of it, and dude's good. He's really good. When you see the trailer and you see the parts that have already been filmed, you'll be like,
okay, we will check it out, and I'll post it when you send me that trailer.
And Mike, I'm going to throw out a concept for a future episode. Pops just made me think of it. Civil War era films.
There you go. Josie Wales.
Not made in the Civil War era, but about the Civil War era.
I understand. I got you. I'm on it.
That would be a fun one, because my favorite is Ride with the Devil by Ang Lee. I'm just going to say it right now.
That is a great movie. I have to watch that again.
So anyway, yeah, back to Roadrunner.
Beep, beep. That's all, folks.
See you guys later.
If you missed the live viewing of any Meg production, you can find all our content on Roku or as a member of this channel. Madness Entertainment Group.